Hi, first and second grade. Today we're going to take a look at our next lesson in Bible. This is lesson 11, which is called Ruth Serves with Love. Okay. Our first lesson is going to focus on Ruth and Naomi. If you remember from last lesson, we learned that Ruth and Naomi were both widows, meaning their husbands died. And we know that Ruth decided to remain loyal to Naomi, right, her mother-in-law. That's where we got our Bible, our memory verse from, right, when Ruth said to Naomi, where you go, I will go, where you stay, I will stay, right, your people will be my people, and your God, my God. So we have Ruth decided to stay loyal to Naomi. So we're going to continue here talking about Ruth and Naomi, right? As we all know, sometimes it is not easy to give help and support your friends, right? So whenever we're having difficulties with our friends, we always want to turn to the Bible. We always want to turn to Jesus to try to help us through those troubled times, right? We can learn from Jesus. We can learn from the people in the Bible. And today's Bible truth is going to focus on being devoted. And devoted means when you show faithfulness and commitment to someone or something. And we know that Ruth was very devoted to Naomi, right? She was faithful, she was committed to her, she would not leave her, and she was staying with her and by her side. So here we have the picture, right? We have Ruth. And it's called Ruth Serves with Love. Let's get this reading up here. Okay. So when Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem, Naomi was recognized by some of the townspeople. They greeted her and asked her about her husband and sons. Naomi answered sadly that both her husband and 2 sons had died in Moab, but that she had brought one of her daughters-in-law with her from that country. Because Naomi and Ruth were widows, they had no one to care for them. God's law allowed widows to get enough to eat by gleaning. Gleaning was picking up any leftover stalks or stems with grain left on them after the harvesters had gone through the fields, cutting down the stalks of ripened grain. Gleaning was hard work, but Ruth chose to glean to gather enough food for both herself and Naomi. God was watching over Ruth. She went to glean in a field belonging to a man named Boaz. He was a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech. When Boaz first saw Ruth out in the field gleaning grain, he didn't know who she was. One of the harvest workers told Boaz that Ruth was the widow of one of Naomi's sons, and that she was faithfully taking care of Naomi. Boaz was impressed that Ruth served Naomi with love. He felt responsible to help because he was a relative, right? So in the picture here we see Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi, and then we see Ruth. She is gleaning, right, to harvest the wheat. Again, that gleaning means to take any leftover stalks or other grain that's left after everyone else went through and harvested the field. Alright, so the story continues here. Boaz told Ruth not to go into any other farmer's fields, but stay in his field and eat with his workers. Ruth was allowed to eat all that she wanted and even take some grain home to Naomi. Boaz also instructed his workers to leave extra grain in the fields for Ruth and not to hurt her in any way. Naomi heard about the kind man who had befriended Ruth. Naomi recognized that Boaz was a relative of Elimelech and that Boaz could become a kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer was a man who was willing to marry and care for a widow of one of his family members. Naomi told Ruth to go and see Boaz that night and ask for his protection. Ruth followed Naomi's instructions. Boaz was pleased with Ruth's respectful behavior. He told Ruth that he would marry her unless a closer male relative wished to do so. Boaz worked out all the details needed to take Ruth as his wife. He loved her and kept her and Naomi safe for the rest of their lives. Ruth and Boaz had a little boy named Obed. He grew up and became the grandfather of King David. Many, many years later, Jesus was born into the same family line, right? So it all started with Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz, and eventually, right down through the line of descendants, Jesus was born. Pretty neat. So we know, if we think back to our lesson, right, that Ruth had made a choice to leave Moab. She made the choice to leave her family, and she made the choice to stay devoted to Naomi and to Naomi's God. If Naomi died, Ruth would have had nothing. But Ruth chose to help Naomi and be devoted to her no matter what happened. Right? Devoted, again, being faithful and committed to her. She helped Naomi at Naomi's greatest time of need. A true friend does not desert someone when help is needed. Naomi and Ruth had become true friends. Ruth was selfless and loyal to Naomi. True friends should be devoted even when it is difficult. Boaz was God's blessing to Ruth for her devotedness to Naomi. Through this marriage, God provided her with a home where she learned more about the one true God. As a devoted friend, Naomi sought protection for Ruth. God blessed Naomi for her devotedness by giving her a son-in-law, Boaz. Eventually, Ruth had a son and became the great-grandmother of King David. Jesus came from this family line. So we know Ruth was a very devoted friend to Naomi, and we know that at times it can be hard to be a devoted friend. Scripture says that a devoted friend will love no matter what. When we look at the Bible verse found in Proverbs 17, the first part of verse 17 says, "A friend loves at all times." So what I would like you to think about today is, are you a devoted friend? Right? We know it might be hard at times, but even in those hard times, are you a devoted friend? Do you show faithfulness and commitment to your friends? Are you always there for them, no matter what? So just go ahead and take some time to think about that, reflect about that, right? If Ruth was able to be a devoted friend, can you make that same promise and be a devoted friend? Okay, first grade, like I said, just want you to take some time thinking about that. Maybe take a little time to pray and ask, again, for help and protection of how that you can become a better friend and a more devoted friend. Keep up the good job. Miss you guys.